Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hello, I'm Marcus Williams, and I'm here with my co-host Brock Morris, and today we have special guest author Cline. Midwest born and bred, Casey tends to collect hobbies and pursuits as quickly as she reads books. When she's not reading or writing, you'll find her baking pies, quilting, riding horses, or shooting guns. She's collected degrees and licenses in several areas, including business, law, and real estate. She's also a mother to 2 girls and 3 cats. Casey is a member of the Romance Writers of America, the Nebraska Writers Guild, and the Latter-day Saints in Publishing, Media, and the Arts. Welcome, Casey. We're so glad to have you on the show with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we jump into our conversation, we need to go over our 2 truths and a lie, and we'll remind everyone here with our scorekeeper, Steve, that Brock is still ahead. He likes to call it a commanding lead, but I'm in it for the long game, so we're fine. I'm fine. It's all fine.
You keep playing that long game. We'll see how that works out for you. Yeah.
All right. So here we go. Number 1, I have run 1 marathon and 2 half marathons. Number 2, I had a metal plate in my face at one point. And number 3, I have been to 6 of the 7 continents. So 1 marathon and 2 halves, a metal plate in her face, and traveled to 6 of the 7 continents. Now, we've had the 6 of the 7 continents before, and there was an argument of whether Oceania is a region or a continent, and what does that include? So we'll have to see if we can dive into that a little bit. Yeah. All right. So you've done a ton of stuff. Business, law, real estate. How did you end up deciding to write?
I feel like I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I've always had a knack for writing. I was a bookworm from a young age. Lots of books devoured. Always loved to read historical romance. I had the idea for my first novel for more than a decade, and I just kept pushing it to the back burner. I was working full time, raising 2 young girls, and just kept saying, okay, I'll do it later. Yet every time I read a historical romance, I kept thinking, I can so do this. I can do this. And so finally, with freeing up some of my time with other work responsibilities coming off my plate, I finally felt the urge 2 years ago, I think it was July, that I needed to start writing this book now. And I had no clue what to do. And so I started taking courses on, plot, story structure, the craft of writing, essentially trying to figure out what to do. And I outlined my first novel. And then January, I think 1st or 2nd of last year, I started typing. And my goal was to finish the manuscript by the end of that year. And I think I did with a few weeks to spare, miraculously. I'm not quite sure how. And then just kind of fell into this business, I guess. I have the business degrees, and it just felt like the natural next step in my life is to actually pursue some of those goals that have been back there on the back burner for a while.
Yeah. So this idea in your mind, did you have the plot fleshed out by the time you sat down to actually kind of put it down on paper, or was it just more of a little sprinklings of ideas and feelings and scenes here and there?
So I consider myself a very heavy plotter, planner person, organizer. And when I first had the idea, it seemed insurmountable, I'll be honest. My idea has been to take the real life English explorer, Isabella Bird, who traveled alone for the most part as a woman from essentially 1850s to almost the turn of the century. And she went to all these amazing places. And so my goal was to write fictional romance characters that travel along with her on these actual journeys. And so I read her first-hand account of her very first trip to America in 1854. And she goes to Boston, Detroit, Chicago, Niagara Falls, Cincinnati, Ohio, New York City, all these big major American cities of the time. And it just felt nearly impossible to try to bring those to life and bring her to life. And so that's kind of what kept me a little intimidated at first. But I did take a really helpful online course that talked about a story arc and broke it down into, okay, let's develop the characters. What are their flaws that they are going to need to overcome during this story? What are the three acts? I'm sure you guys have heard of the three acts before, and then there are three checkpoints in each act. And that course, and we got instructor feedback, really helped me outline this novel into something that I could tackle more easily. I wouldn't say it was a walk in the park. Some days I sat down and I was like, I have no clue what I am doing, but I will get it out there.
Yeah, and I mean, even with when you have all of the rules and the diagrams and that framework, you still have to write a compelling story. You're still doing the hard part. It's that doesn't just suddenly create itself because you have character arcs and such. Like, you have to make each page interesting. So absolutely, it's still a very difficult process, and that's very cool. That's a great idea. And I love that you're taking a very strong historical figure, female figure, and creating stories surrounding her. So is she one of the main characters, or are you creating fictional characters surrounding her?
So she is not I write historical romance. So they're romance novels, but she is not one of the hero or heroines. She did eventually get married to a one-eyed guy, which is kind of an interesting thing. But I really didn't feel like there would be I mean, she's a very interesting person, but I didn't feel like there would be a romance story arc with her as the main character. A lot of that time when you delve directly into the actual historical person, it becomes more of a biographical reading of what happened in their life, which is still interesting. Right. But I'm not quite sure that it would tie into the romance genre. So yes, I invented fictional people, although they seem very real in my mind, that travel with Isabella on this trip. And so she is the kind of the side character that just kind of does what she pleases. And I think she's super funny. It's hard to do justice to a real person. I don't know how she actually was other than reading her thoughts in her books. But I did write it so that she is kind of a humorous side character that helps the characters along on their journey.
Yeah. So did you have the opportunity to travel to some of these different places that she was as you're doing research for the book?
I wish. It's been a lot of Google mapping and looking up historical details. So I visited. I have been to Boston before, but not for this trip. I visited from Google Maps, and same with Detroit and stuff. But honestly, if I went there, a lot of the stuff might not be there that was there in 1854. Right. So in my mind, I traveled there. My current novel is in Hawaii, so I mean, I would love to consider that a work trip, but alas, Google Maps again.
It's a tax write-off, so
yeah.
I think you probably have to. Yeah.
So we'll see if I ever make it out to Hawaii while I'm writing the second one.
I think it's necessary.
Okay, I will. Yeah. I will add that to the to-do list
for sure. So, romance novels tend to have almost a very strict format and story arc and tropes that readers want. Did you find that difficult to create your story around those kind of set tropes, or did naturally your story fit that?
No, I kind of liked, for me as a newer author, having the trope as a guideline. So the first novel, The Wayfaring Widow, is an enemies to lovers, which is one of my favorite tropes to read. And so that was fun to write, and making sure that the progression of the relationship is natural and the readers wouldn't be, oh, well, why are they suddenly in love? That seems odd. They just hated each other. So, that's probably maybe the biggest challenge with the trope I chose, but it's my favorite one to read, and it was a really fun one to write.
So you were familiar enough with it through your reading that it wasn't
Mhm.
so unnatural or difficult to kind of fit your story into that as you're writing. Okay.
Yes, and I definitely wanted to stick with genre expectations, not really go too far outside of what people see, but bring something new with the historical aspect of Isabella Bird.
Right. And I
So
think, oh, go ahead, Brock.
no, you're good, Marcus.
I think, no, I just lost my train of thought. So
No,
go
good. You don't ask my question. Yeah.
ahead.
So is this book that you're writing that takes place in Hawaii, is it a continuation of that same story? Is this a series, and do you have a certain number of books that you're planning, or is this a complete offshoot?
So the second book is a continuation of some of the characters. I want it to be a standalone, but I also want the readers of the first book to be ready and want to read the rest of the family that is involved. So in the first book, the hero is Harrison Wright, and his younger sister is 3 years old in the first book, and she is part of that first book. And then 19 years later is when Isabella Bird travels to Hawaii. And so Georgina, which is Harrison's younger sister, is the one that is going on the trip to Hawaii 19 years later. And then the third book will have the younger sister of the hero of the second book. So we have Joseph Livingston in the second book as the hero, and his younger sister Jessie will be the heroine in the third book, which is the Rocky Mountains. And Isabella traveled directly from Hawaii to the Rocky Mountains, also in 1873. So I get to stay in the same time period for book three. She does travel to Asia, and that one, I don't know. I'm kind of sticking with these three for now. That one really intimidates me, but all of the other books have been intimidating as well. So I'm focusing on these three right now, and we'll see what develops after that.
So have you self-published these books, or are you traditionally publishing?
So I am in the demoralizing process of trying to traditionally publish them. So I finished the edits of The Wayfaring Widow at the end of last year, and I started querying for publication this January. So I'm about 5 months in,
Oh, lots
and
going
I
on.
know that's not long in the grand scheme of publishing. Um, but I've had quite a few rejections from agents and publishers, but I do still have some outstanding that I'm waiting to hear back on. So we'll see how that pans out. And then not like it's a fallback position, but I feel like as a first time author, having the assistance on navigating all of the aspects of publishing would be super helpful for me. And then
Yeah.
potentially look at self publishing if it doesn't pan out.
Yeah. And I know in the self-publishing world, romance is one of the more successful genres, but because of that, it's very saturated.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, you can find a lot of romance authors who do very well in self-publishing, but your competition is
Yes.
pretty tough there. So I totally understand, and it's a difficult learning curve, especially when your focus is on writing the story and making sure you have the book and the story that you like, and then having to learn all of the other aspects of the self-publishing. Uh, that can be really daunting. So I totally get it, and I don't think that, like you said, I don't think it's a fallback plan necessarily. I think they're just two choices, and it's totally fine if one choice doesn't pan out to move to the second choice. I don't think one is better than the other. Um, Although some people do, like there's still people who look down on self-publishing or snub their nose at traditional publishing, but um, to the reader, they don't care. You know, a reader doesn't care how the book was published; they just care if it was a good story.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So in the romance genre, you've got all levels of cleanliness, non-cleanliness. How did you decide where to land your story?
Well, I mostly read clean. When I read historical romance, it's usually clean. And so it just felt natural to write that way. And with kind of the conventions of the time, I found, it is a natural progression to have cleaner content. Although, not to say that historical romance can't be taken outside of the clean realm by any means. Unfortunately, when I say I'm a historical romance author, I feel like I have to, um, you know, say, okay, not the kind where the people on the cover are half clothed, that sort of thing. Like, it's a clean and wholesome. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So just the fact that I have to add that caveat when I say I'm a historical romance author, it's kind of like, so, that's just what I prefer to consume myself. And that's what I feel
Right.
like I'm capable of writing. Honestly, I felt if someone asked me to write not clean, I would be extremely intimidated and embarrassed to do that. And I don't know that I could. That would scare me more, honestly.
Yeah. Have you had any feedback from the agents and publishers you submitted to that would prefer more spice?
So the publishers I've submitted to are faith-based
Okay.
publishers, and so I'm hoping, since they publish clean and wholesome romances, that I'm in line with what they publish. Agents and editors, I've had to do a lot of filtering, just based on the content that they put out, and that's totally fine. Like, we're not a good match then.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste anyone's time if they are targeting a different audience than I want to target.
And I think that's a great way to look at it, that it's not good or bad. It's just not a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that, we stress, and we've said before, and I think we'll probably say it a million times again, that we're not trying to say that this is what everyone should read, or this is the only books that you should read, or this is the path that you should take. Our concern and the issue that we saw when we started the podcast is there are people out there, consumers, readers, who want clean content, and it's hard to find it, and it's hard to know.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we help them find that content for those who want it? And those who don't want it, I think there's a system in place already that's very easy to find the books that they want to find. Like you said, the covers, it's very obvious when you see a cover where the people are, half clothed, what you're going to get. It's the other way that's more difficult, and that's the focus. That's what the problem that we saw that we were trying to address, I guess, is the way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something very interesting too, Casey, as you were describing how intimidating and challenging it would be to actually try to write something that was more racy or wasn't as clean. I mean, that's just because it's what comes naturally to you. And I think that's the other part of what we're trying to show is similar. It would be for those who are very comfortable writing in that genre. It would probably be challenging for them to write a really clean novel. And so this isn't good or bad or anything. It's just a different approach. You're writing what is true to you, right? And what you're comfortable with. And it would be likely you wouldn't be able to write a very good book if it required all of the spiciness, as you put it, Marcus, that maybe some of these others would demand. You wouldn't be able to churn out as good a story, I assume. I mean, but Case, you'd have to weigh in on that, but that's what I assume based on what you said.
Yeah, most likely. Even kissing scenes. So I do have, I consider my content PG. So there's kissing. There's not really swearing unless you consider like blast and the kind of 19th century clean swearing. But yeah, so sometimes even kissing scenes, I'm like, is this a little much? I don't know. I tried to write one yesterday and was struggling a little bit.
Marcus, you'll have to edit that blast out. That's a bit strong for what we normally have in here.
I don't know that word.
You can pull that out. No, it's a great point, Casey.
We'll put a content warning at the beginning.
Okay, yeah, shoot. So much for the Cline library.
Well, that made me think I was taking some self-publishing, not courses, but someone had a bunch of videos and help on self-publishing, and she writes romance. But the advice and stuff applies to any genre. So um, one day I was like, well, should I be following this person's advice? Because is she even any good? And so I read one of the books, and it was definitely spicy. But thinking about it, if you took out all those scenes, it would almost be a short story.
Hmm.
So is it is it almost more difficult when you don't add those scenes because you have to come up with so much more plot, so much more story to fill the pages, because you can't just say, okay, I've got the next 10 pages are going to be a spicy scene, which, yes, there's an art to writing those as well, I think, but you've suddenly taken all this out of your story and you have to add that back in because you still have to create that
Hmm.
length. You still have to get to your word count. So, you know, I don't know. That's just something I thought of as you were talking, that it's almost more story that you have to come up with when you take that stuff out.
Yeah, agreed. I feel like I feel like I have to develop my characters more, which is fine. I mean, that's what we're there for, is the characters. My theme for my books is, true love goes beyond what is just on the outside. Really diving into that person's heart and soul. So, I mean, just because they're clean doesn't mean my characters don't have flaws or aren't struggling with things. I have physically marred characters. I have a character that's struggling with neurodiversity in kind of day
Mm-hmm.
and age where no one really knew what it was about. And I read a
Yeah.
medical treatise on what they thought it was back then, and they considered it a mental disorder. And so I feel like I can still touch on these very heart-rending aspects of being a human, and the characters um, see the good in each other and see beyond that and find their true love. And so, that's kind of what I focus on more. So I still try to have kind of those scenes where they're close together, they hold hands, or they almost kiss. I know you guys don't really write romance, but that's kind of a big milestone in a romance usually, and then an actual kiss. So, oh, here's one right here. There's a cat.
There we go.
I knew it was bound to happen.
uh, I well, I wouldn't call it a romance. I have a Christmas book that it's more romantic than any of my others, and I found it difficult to write because how do I make it so that their feelings are realistic, but it's not too cheesy? So for me, it was hard, especially trying to put myself, because it was from the um, female's point of view. I'm like, I don't
Mm.
like, how do I do that? I don't know what that's like. I had never felt that before, so I had to have my wife read it and
Yeah.
help me
Did she
out.
think
But
you did okay? Did you do okay?
yeah, she did, and she actually thought it was funny because she's like, "Wait a minute, are you writing about me?"
Yeah.
and and actually, that book takes place in Nebraska, which
Oh,
that's how you're part of Nebraska, because
yep.
I lived in Nebraska for 2 years. So,
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I I was there when the Huskers were good.
Okay. Yes. The glory days.
So that will tell you how long ago it was.
Yes.
But
We've only been here 5 years, but we call it home now. So,
I think I think I like it better. Like when I lived there, I was like, I'll never live here again. But now looking back, more fond memories, and I think
yeah.
at this stage in my life, I probably wouldn't. I probably would like it a lot more than I did at that age. Put it
Yeah.
that way. But a lot to offer. It's a
Um, but back to your
cool
thing,
place.
yeah, I write in dual point of view. So I do
Mm-hmm.
switch between the hero and the heroine. And so I do try to really get into each character's head and make sure when it's their point of view, you can tell, okay, this is what a man's perspective would be. And obviously I'm not a man, but like he
Right.
wouldn't notice what fabric her dress is, or maybe even what color. So what things would a male notice, or try to feel, or sort of thing. So that's been an interesting journey as well.
Yeah, and just the realization that you have to think through it. Like you have to go through that process and think, what would this person think? I think is a great exercise for any character you're writing. That's not based on you, because that's the art of writing, is creating a character and getting into that character's head even when you've not experienced the things that character is experiencing. And that's a challenge. Like you have to be able to empathize with other people, see it from their point of view, and that's not always easy to do. Absolutely. So as of right now, while you're still querying publishers, do you have anything that you've put out that the public can read?
Yes. So I have a little novella that I've been working on for the last few months. I started it as kind of like a way to collaborate with readers through my website. So I put up a voting form and had people vote on what trope, romance trope, and the characters' names, and kind of anything else they wanted to see. And so what was chosen was a mistaken identity romance, which is kind of fun because I hadn't written one of those before. And so Violet St. James and William, oh gosh, what is his last name now? Montgomery? I don't know. He's just Will in my head now. Yes, Montgomery, in Dearborn, Colorado in 1886. Their little romance is up for free on my website in a PDF. I just finished at the second cliffhanger, which is where they are about to kiss. And so I had people vote on whether he should kiss her. And so I am now working on writing the next installment of that. And that was the kissing scene I was trying to write the other day. So yes, that is available for free. It's kind of a fun little side project, just kind of a low stakes, fun way to just write in a different time period. And horses and cowboy hats and leather saddles, and I'm all for that. So that's been a fun little romp. So that's the only thing that's out there published right now. I also have a really scintillating article on stream buffer ordinances that I wrote in law school. That's all out there as well if anyone has insomnia issues. But that's the extent of my publications.
That could help with that. So did you get a lot of input and interaction with people to help you write the story?
No. I'll be honest, no. I think and one of them's probably my mom and the other's probably my husband. So maybe 2 or 3 real people that actually voted. And I track analytics so I can see who visits that certain page on my website, but hopefully it'll gain more traction.
Sure.
And we'll see. I just started my website in January, so I'm still gaining
well, I think that's a great way to go about building a following. And that's always the challenge for me. Is it seems like a lot of the lessons on building your audience or selling your books start with this preconception that you already have people coming to your website. No, my issue is not the second part. It's the first part of how do I get people there in the first place? And is that just through organic content? Is that through social media? Is that through ads? That's the hard part, is that first step. I think, once you get your audience, you find your people, they're going to like your content and they're going to want to engage with you and stuff, but it's finding them that's the difficult part.
Yeah, I agree. I read Jane Friedman's The Business of Being a Writer book in December, and all time, hands down, the best book I've read about, being a writer. And, she talks about building a platform and collaborating with other authors, sharing their content, that sort of thing. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is just connect with other like-minded people who, like to write clean or like to write romance or read romance and that sort of thing. And so, that's kind of where I've been, doing my platform and website and social media pages from.
Yeah. Do you have a newsletter?
Yes, I do. So I send it out the first of the month. Last month, I think I was up to 9 people. Again, that includes husband and mother. So,
Sure.
but it's okay. I keep it short. I try not to spam people's inboxes. Um,
Yeah.
I try to include a little excerpt from the book I'm writing that maybe I didn't publish to Facebook, so it's kind of something exclusive. But yeah, we'll see. I just need to stop worrying about numbers and start just worrying more about the quality of the connection rather than quantity.
Yeah, because it'll grow. Mine's very slow, and it grows slowly. And I try to do newsletter swaps with other authors and book swaps with other authors and such. And you get one or two here and one or two there, but the, it can't grow unless you start it. So
Yeah.
that's what you've done. And listeners out there, her website's in the description. So go and join Casey's newsletter.
Yeah, I'll be sending it out Saturday. So June
Pump her
1st.
up to double digits, people.
Yes, I'm hoping for 2 whole hands.
Absolutely. So, are you? One of the struggles a lot of people have is writing is something that is either a hobby or it takes a long time to really get going and grow a business. So, how do you find the time to sit down and write? How does that work for you?
Oh yeah. So with my kids are school age, and so when they are not off school for summer, which we just started summer, so I gotta
Mm-hmm.
just realize my expectations for words on the page is going to go down considerably for the next 3 months. I try to write as much as I can during the 8 to 3 that they're in school, but obviously I have other things that I do. And so, even going to the grocery store, Costco, or a doctor's appointment, or I do martial arts class, things can eat up that time. But my goal is to have that balance. And so when my kids are home from school, I'm here. I can take them to their activities. We can make leprechaun traps in March, or stuff like that. And I try to keep my weekends open as well. So rarely am I writing on the weekends. So I guess I'm kind of in the blissful, I don't really have real deadlines other than ones I set for myself right now stage of being a writer.
Yeah, which is not a bad place to be,
Right.
honestly. Um, and do you ever have, when you sit down to write, do you ever deal with writer's block? And if so, how do you work through that?
Yeah, I feel like it's just like any activity where there's a warm up period, stretching before walking or going out to exercise or something like that. Um, and I feel it's the same way for me personally. So if I haven't written in several days, then it kind of takes me a little while to get back into the groove. And really, I just kind of keep forcing myself to put words on the page. And I'm very slow and methodical. I'm not the one that is like, oh, just get the words on the page, I'll edit later. No, I hate editing. So I kind of do it as I go. And so I'll reread a lot, go back, make sure it sounds good, erase here, type there, that sort of thing. So some days it's slow. I'll get 250 words on a page. I think the most I've typed so far on the second manuscript in one day was 1,500 words, which is not much, but that was my record. And so that's just kind of my process. And I go through my outline and go scene by scene essentially, and just keep writing. Often
Working
I'll
through
have
it.
to stop and go back to Isabella's book and make sure I've captured the details correctly. Right now, my characters are on the top of Mauna Loa, the volcano, at
Mm-hmm.
almost 14,000 feet. And so trying to give an accurate portrayal of what the top of a volcano in Hawaii looks like in 1873, as I want to be true to that. And so making sure those details are in there.
Which kind of goes back to needing to visit it, probably, if you really want to.
I don't know if I'm cut out for being on top of on horseback, although I'd love that. Being on top of a volcano without modern conveniences, I don't know.
Well, it's nice to hear from someone who is a plotter, because we've had other guests who are more what they call pantsers, see their pants in. I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. And you look at famous, successful authors, you've got Dean Koontz, who says he writes one page at a time, and he'll go over that page and over until it's perfect before he moves on to the next page. And you have other people who spit out the entire book and then they go back. So the process, I think it's important for people who are writing, aspiring authors, to know that whatever their process is the right process for them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do it the way someone else does it, because your mind works differently. The way you type, the way you see, the way the characters speak to you is going to be different than the other guy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So do you, as part of the guilds and memberships you're a part of, does that include like critique groups and stuff like that?
So I'm not part of a formal critique group. I have submitted, The Wayfaring Widow, the first book, has been through a lot of different reviews. I did a couple workshops with the first 10 pages of it. It's been edited a lot of times. I actually just got feedback on it this morning from a writer's conference where I submitted the first 10 pages for a contest. Didn't win. But I got that feedback this morning, and part of me is just like, oh goodness, here we go again. I added a little more I added less backstory, or took out some of the backstory, but then they wanted more backstory. I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, it's the author's project. You can take as much advice as you want, but it's your story, your strengths, and you know how you want to tell it. So trust that instinct, I think, is the first thing that I've kind of learned. I'm only 18 months into this journey. But yeah, I saw a meme yesterday that was perfect on kind of an editing services Facebook page. And it says your manuscript after you get all of the feedback. And it was a pizza, but half of it had like chocolate sauce and M&Ms on it. And the other half had cheese and I think a few Swedish fish, and then like an entire rotisserie chicken. And so like that, I think that's perfect. Like that is what my manuscript would be if I took everyone's advice and put it all in there.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, just kind of feeling what I should do. Not like I know what I'm doing is best and whatnot, but yeah. So I'm not part of a writing group. I have gotten a lot of critique and feedback, and I'm open to critique and feedback to a certain extent.
Yeah.
As long as it's true to kind of my characters and my story and the way I write.
Right.
Well, no, and that's been a big part of what we've heard from other authors too, is as much as you want to take feedback, you do have to, it is your story, right? They are your characters. And at some point you are the expert, right? Or you have to do what you feel like is true to that. And to your point, you would have a hodgepodge otherwise if you didn't just sometimes, and I assume, I'm not a writer, but I assume, and from the conversations we've had, that can take a lot of courage to do, to sometimes put that aside and just say, no, I think I know what's best. I can take bits and pieces of advice people have given, but ultimately I am the one who is going to move this forward. And that can be a scary thing, or at least that's what the impression is from who we've talked to.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of times the feedback is them telling you how they would write it if it was their story.
Yes.
It's not their story.
Yeah.
It's difficult to give feedback and critique in a way that's like, this is what you should do because this is what you're going, like these are your goals, so I want to help you get your goals. It's a lot easier for a person to put their personal opinion or spin on it. So yeah, it's the wisdom of weeding through all that and deciding what works for your story and what doesn't, and what is legitimate and what is just opinion. And that's a difficult thing to do. And I think some people shy away from critique just because of that that issue. They know they're going to have it, and just the anxiety of having to go through all of that is more troubling or upsetting than not getting the critique in the first place.
Yeah.
Being that vulnerable, right, is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely. So, well, we are about out of time. So thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, but we need to jump into your two truths and a lie and see if we can figure those out before
Okay.
we close. So I'm going to remind everyone what they were, and then we'll make our guesses and see if I can start my slow catch up. All right. So number one, I have run one marathon and two half marathons. Number two, I had a metal plate in my face at one point. And number three, I have been to 6 of the 7 continents.
So, do we want to let you go first now, Marcus? I mean, I feel like maybe I've had an advantage there. I don't want people assuming that
No,
I've been, all right. I'll
no,
keep.
go ahead. We'll stick with
All
the
right.
same four. I don't want to feel like I'm complaining or whining that you've had an advantage. Just
But that we'll let the listeners determine that, right? So, so I am going to say that I think that I'm going to say that being to 6 of the 7, or having been to 6 of the 7 continents, is the lie. I think that you may have visited several of them, but 6 of 7 is a pretty specific number. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the other ones I can absolutely see as truths. I mean, I don't know. I can't actually see whether or not you've had a plate in your face at any point, so I shouldn't say that for our listeners who are only listening and not seeing. But yeah, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with number 3 as the lie.
okay. Well, that was going to be my choice as well. So I'll just stick with it. Yeah, I'll stick with number 3 as well.
Okay.
Number
All right.
3.
You are both wrong. Number 1 is the lie. I am not a runner at all.
Not a runner.
No, I hate
All right.
running.
So we once again stay even. We're in a. This has been the multiple episodes where we've stayed even.
Well, there
We've
you
stayed
go.
even. You really tricked us, because when you talked about not visiting many of the places that that your characters had, I was kind of making some assumptions off of that. True,
Oh yeah.
but you're well traveled then.
As a young child, yes,
Okay.
frequent flyer dad. So I have been to everywhere but Antarctica. So yes,
Cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, at least we both lost. It wasn't just me.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for thinking I'm fit enough to be a runner, but yes, I don't run.
Well, pretty active in other things. So
Yes, so yeah, I do stay active other ways, but yes.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm not a runner either. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Casey, for being on the show with us. It was a lot of fun. People, our listeners out there, please go to her website, subscribe to her newsletter, check out her books. We anxiously await the books when they get published and wish you the best in finding a publisher for your books. And those of you out there, please follow, subscribe, and share with your friends and others who may be looking for clean content to read for themselves. We appreciate you watching or listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Clean Library Podcast.